I'd like to thank everybody for the warm welcome here today and giving me the opportunity to speak to you about Éirígí. That's the Irish word for truth, and we represent human rights and justice for all those who were bereaved as a result of British state violence, British state-sponsored murder, truth and collusion about that there. Our victims' organisation totally opposed the thought of the Irish government's official invitation, let alone an actual, completely crazy costing visit, which is now being played out in the forthcoming days, to the British Army's Commander-in-Chief, the British Queen. From our Éirígí point of view, we oppose the visit, as in the absence of Britain acknowledging its brutal and oppressive role as major protagonists throughout the conflict in Ireland over the last 40 years, this visit should not have been considered the right thing to do. Monies afforded to this visit would have been much better spent in forming an independent international truth commission to address all the conflict-related issues. The conflict in Ireland has evidenced many issues, in particular victims of British Army murder via collusion with other state forces, the vast majority of which still await proper investigation. In addition to these murders, the British Army has been responsible for many other heinous war crimes, including harassment, rape, house raids, physical and verbal abuse, threats, roadside beatings, torture and collusion with loyalist paramilitaries. None of these war crimes have been given any sentencing, and victims are in the absence of recognition of their traumatic experience and their human rights to truth and justice. The people here present today are not fooled by this little old grandmother. She is the wolf in sheep's clothing. We have not forgotten what her former armies and governments have engaged in and continue to engage in. We have not forgotten all the pain inflicted upon Ireland by our neighbours in England. Our famine hunger was not very neighbourly. Our exiles flung to the four corners of the earth was not very neighbourly. Blowing up border roads, creating much social and economic deprivation, was not neighbourly either. Murder by British armies in Ireland was definitely not neighbourly. And the truth and reality is, they are neighbours from hell.
On behalf of Éirígí, I want to thank everyone for coming here today. You have seen through the lies and the censorship of the state and the private media. You have ignored the bully boy tactics of the Garda. Despite the best efforts of the political establishment, you have asserted a number of fundamental rights here today. You have asserted the right of free assembly. We have asserted the right to organise politically. We have asserted the right to our own political expression. For that, the people of this country owe you a great thanks. If you were in Libya, or if you were in Iran, or if you were in Syria, the Sunday Independent would be calling you heroes. But here they call you criminals, and they say that all we are interested in is violence. What we see behind us here today is not normality. The people who are attempting to bring Elizabeth Windsor to our streets tell us that it is normality. They tell us that it's the most normal thing in the world for the head of the British state to visit Ireland. There is nothing normal about that visit. There is nothing normal about 5,000 British troops occupying the 6 counties. And there is nothing normal about 9,000 paramilitary PSNI. And there is nothing normal about the hundreds of MI5 agents that operate across this island. Behind us we see a police operation, the scale of which has never been witnessed before in this state. I ask you, what is normal about that? What is normal about what you see behind you?
Nothing.
Those that have promoted this visit have said that it will help with tourism. and it will help with relations between the peoples of Ireland and Britain. But can someone answer me this? How does bringing the head of the occupying power to this city on the very day, the very anniversary of the Dublin Monaghan bombings, how does that help relations?
She's dancing on rails.
How can it help relations between the peoples of these islands to bring the head of the British military to the Garden of Remembrance, a garden dedicated to those who fought and died in the fight for freedom against that same British state? How can it help relations to bring, as there are now as we speak, 120 armed members of the British police into Dublin? How does that help relations? And now, most disgracefully of all, we hear that the UDA are to visit our city, that the 5 so-called brigadiers and 30 of their henchmen will be brought to the Memorial Gardens in Island Bridge for a wreath-laying ceremony. How can all of that help relations between the people of Ireland and Britain? How can putting people under house arrest in Marylebone Lane, how does that help relations between the people of Ireland and Britain? How do armed checkpoints and stop and search of pedestrians and motorists, how does that help relations between Ireland and Britain? They say it will help tourism and trade. How does closing Dublin Zoo help tourism? How does shutting the Garden of Remembrance help tourism? How does closing the museum in Croke Park help tourism? How does closing the M50 and the M7 and the M4, how does all of that help tourism? How does banning parking in Dublin help tourism? I tell you, comrades, the lies that have been told about this visit, that this visit is designed to promote better relations between Britain and Ireland, and that to promote tourism and trade, those lies have been exposed. Because the true agenda of this visit is now becoming apparent, and it's becoming apparent to more and more people. It was never about improving relations or tourism. It was about one thing and one thing only, and that was concretising the British presence in the 6 counties. It was about making partition permanent and extending British influence in the 6 counties. That's what this visit was always about.
Foremost, I'd just like to say on this cloudy, sunny afternoon, there's no better place than I'd rather be than with my comrades here in Dublin. To protest against this visit, which I think is utterly disgusting. 100 years ago, James Connolly led a protest against King George coming to this very city. I'm proud to say and glad to say that we're all here to carry on that tradition. I'm going to sing a song called Connolly Was There. Well, there is a page in history when the workers they fought back, when the might of our exploitation at last began to crack, and farm and field and factory and workshop, mine and mill, a flame was lit, a beacon bright, the flame was burning still. For Connolly was there, Connolly was there, brave, bold and daunted, James Connolly was there. William Martin Murphy and his Dublin millionaires tried bribery, corruption, hypocrisy and prowess. This time the Transport Union, their scabs laid in list. All their work was shattered by a scarlet iron fist. For Connolly was there, Connolly was there, brave, bold and daunted, James Connolly was there. While the bosses tried to sweat the lads right down on Glasgow's clay, a voice of roar and thunder shook them in their stride. In Liverpool and Belfast, where the workers' life was hell, Connolly rose and gave them hope, the truth do you may tell. For Connolly was there, Connolly was there, brave, bold and daunted, James Connolly was there. Yes, Connolly was there, Connolly was there, brave, bold and daunted, James Connolly was there. Irishmen, the day will come when the workers will rise up from their bended knee and rally to the call. Throw out the boss's tyranny and shout from shore to shore for a socialist republic out for freedom evermore. And Connolly will be there, Connolly undaunted, James Connolly will be there. Yes, Connolly will be there. Connolly will be there. Brave, bold, undaunted, James Connolly will be there.